G'day. A friend of mine asked me whether I could make up some brackets for his camera tripod. It's a European tripod, one of the better makes around the place I'm told, but they're having trouble getting parts, supply chain and all that sort of stuff. So that's it there. It's an interesting little thing because it's got a screw in there, there's a little bail, and then there's also a machined, or originally it was cast, but I've machined it, a machined base, and that slots into a dovetail arrangement on the tripod. There are two main parts to this. One is the base. It's a zinc die cast. I'll probably make it out of aluminium, but the other part is the screw with the bail. Now, the screw I've already made up. Nothing terribly complicated about that. To get the two holes diametrically opposite, I could have put it in a dividing head, but what I did was I just scribed a line across there, lined that up in my vise with the line vertical, and then turned it around to drill the other one, and all set. The finish on here is an iron phosphate, and I did that simply by soaking these things for a few hours in this stuff. This is available from the Big Green store, but it puts that sort of greenish colour on there, and if you do it carefully, you can oil that up and all sorts, and gives you it's not wonderful, but it's a modicum of corrosion protection. It looks a little different from the bright steel. The next part is making up the bails. What I've got here is a bit of tube about 25 diameter. I've got a small hole in the bottom, and I've got some 2.4 wire. It's actually some welding wire, stainless welding wire. I'm going to hook that in there, and with the lathe on the lowest speed, I'm going to basically wind a spiral that I can then cut up. Now, this is potentially dangerous. If you get a hand or something caught in there, you can be all sorts of strife. So that's why I've got the lowest speed. The collet chuck is pure coincidence, but it's probably a good idea because there's less protruding things. The pliers, if I get into trouble, I can just let go of those. It might make a bit of a noise, but at least it's not my hand or my finger being trapped between the wire and the mandrel, because that will really ruin my day. So there's the result. As you can see, it was a close run thing, but I only needed this many, so you only got one take at that. But the tension on the back tension was required to get the wrapping. This is actually sprung back. The pipe was an inch diameter OD, and it's now about 30, which is about what's needed, so that's all good. Yes, I underestimated the amount of inertia in that drivetrain on the lower speed, so just let that be a warning. If I had a longer piece of rod, I probably would have stopped a little bit sooner. But anyway, I've got what I want, which is some stainless wire curled. As you can see, it's about the right size. Use a hard surface or something like that in the vise to carefully bend that over like so. You can see that's partially bent there. Then come along to my template that I've got, which was drawn around the original bail. Work out where the next bend has to be, mark that, cut it off a little bit below that, straighten that out, and then bend that over. I've cut that to roughly to length, and then I'm going to put a bend in, and then I'm going to trim these ends up to fit on the stud. Once I've got my basic shape right, so check that on the template, I then put that on top of the screw, and using a pen here, just mark the spot where I reckon I need to cut it. I'll cut that with the angle grinder, and then sort of lever that on, give that a bit of a press that way to lock it on, and that's the sort of thing that I'm getting. Here I am, almost ready to go to put the bevel on the edge there, and then flip the part over and do the same there. I've got a stack of sign blocks under here that gives me 26 degrees, and when I put my precision goniometer on there, which I'm told is the technical name for an angle measuring device, it'll tell me that it's 26 degrees when the needle finally settles. This is only rough, but it's a nice confirmation to know that, yeah, you're around about where you should be, so that's all good. To set this up, I've had to, well, not had to, but I've trammed this in so it's parallel with the column, and then I've trammed this in so it's parallel with the column, which means it's then parallel with the hinge line, and that's really the only way you can get a proper angle here that's going to be constant all the way. It's just one of those things. What I now need to do is mount up a cutter, find that very corner there with the very corner of the cutter, and come along and mill that along. To my great delight, I've been able to just flip this over and do the same cut, and it gives me the bevel I'm after. There's just a very slight catch there, which I'll smooth out with a bit of emery. I guess in the whole scheme of things, these two parallel surfaces aren't all that important. It's this angle and the width of that dovetail which is the important thing. So I reckon I've got that just about where it needs to be. Next step in the proceedings is basically going to be lopping these into probably about 54mm lengths. There'll be a little bit of left over here, but that's okay. And then facing those off and doing the pocketing. I'm about to start pocketing out the top and bottom of these pieces. There are a couple of ways you can do this. One of them is to put it in there and change your cutters and do all the stuff you can, leaving the part in place. The other one is to leave your cutter in place and swap out your bits and pieces. Now, because I've got a stop here, I've got parallels there, I'm sort of fixed in place there, and all my parts measure pretty much the same. I could do both, so I probably will. I think I'm going to start by doing a pocket here using a larger cutter, and then because the corners are going to be tight, R3 or 1/8 corners, I'm then going to run around with a smaller cutter just to do the perimeter there. On the back, I'll be doing the same sort of thing, running around with a large cutter to take most of the material out, and then running around the edges with a beveled cutter to put the angle on. Recapping what I've done here, I had a scribed line on here which I used the larger cutter to go up to, so I just did that by eyeball. I then came along, because I had this centered, I used the coordinates on the DRO to go out to the edges and pocket that out, and then I did a final skim cut through, because the first cut I stopped around about, it's 1mm deep, I stopped about 0.8. And that way I had a little bit of clean up and I could get a nice consistent finish there. I do have a problem, I guess, with the edges here not being quite symmetric. They're you know, 0.2, 0.3 off, which is a bit annoying, but it's probably swarf and a whole bunch of other things that are adding up in there. I'm now going to flip this over and do the same with the back. Plunge cut around the middle, and then do a cut around the edge to clean up. Now that edge to clean up needs to be angled, and so what I've got is this. This is a woodworking router bit. It did have a bearing on there. I've taken that off and cleaned that up. So this is a 25-degree cutter, so that should give me a 25-degree chamfer. These things for aluminium are quite good. I have heard rumours that people have used them on steel. Don't know about that, but certainly as a way of getting a readily available special shaped cutter, they're a good way to go. As you can see, the pocketing is done. I'm pretty happy with these. There's a little bit of roughness from the tool in there, but nothing that can't be lived with. The next operation that's got to happen here is the hole in the middle for the holding screw. On the original part it was diameter 10. Now the screw is only quarter inch, so 6.35. But that was almost the size of the circlip that held it on. So I think I'll start with making these diameter 7 and put the counter bore in, and then we'll see how it works, and if the end user wants to take that out a bit, he can. Here are the 4 bases, all pocketed out top and bottom. Worked out quite nicely actually using the routing cutter in there. There are the screws for fastening the camera on, so they go in there. There's a circlip goes around there, and we're away. The bails fit quite nicely. So, thanks for watching. Please share. See you the next time.